In the following video, we're going to take a look at creating the Ken Burns effect using Premiere. Now, Ken Burns is a famous filmmaker, director, who was instrumental in using photography in his films. So he did a lot of documentaries that were biographies in jazz, the Civil War. These are some of his pretty well-known ones, such as the Civil War here. And you can take a look at different clips. I think you can find a whole lot of different things about this. So it might actually, you might even be able to see some of the stuff.
The Civil War was fought in 10,000 places, from Valverde, New Mexico, and Tullahoma, Tennessee.
So there was a very simple version of the Ken Burns effect where you pan across images. So he even has a Wikipedia entry, which is kind of fun, for this Ken Burns effect, the pan and scan thing. Now, using this pan and scan doesn't mean that you just pan across any image and that's it. What you really want to do is use this in a way so that you are illustrating what's important about this image, such as focusing in on one person or coming out to show everybody else. So you do want to use it for a particular technique of highlighting an item or something like that in the video itself. But a good demonstration of this is actually on the Wikipedia here. So here you can see that we're focusing in on this guy a little bit. Notice how it just stopped abruptly. Not perfect, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Then we go to another image. Kind of stops abruptly. Not perfect. But you can see at least we're kind of focusing in on the face. Here we start one place and we move across to the other place. And notice how fast that went across. That has a lot of energy when you move that quickly on an image. So there are a lot of things that you can do with this particular effect to change how we interpret this image. Whether or not it's very slow, whether it's very fast, whether or not we're zooming in, zooming out, all sorts of different things. So you do want to be aware of how you're using this technique and what you're using it for, not just the fact that you can make a couple keyframes in Premiere. Anyway, to create the pan and zoom effect in Premiere, number one thing that you want to be aware of is what size of photo you have. Now I have an image which is 1024 by 768 here first. See, that's this first item. And then I'll go to my next item and see what we're at. Looks like this one's a lot larger. And it's hard for me to really tell what size it is right now. But if I go to my, need to move over just a little bit more so I can see this next item, the effects controls. If I go to the effects controls and go to motion, you'll see I can scale this down a little bit and I can really get an idea about how large this image can go. Now when you're scaling things, you typically shouldn't go much beyond 100%. I'd say that you can go up to about 120%, 115% without a huge loss in quality, but you are losing quality anytime you go above 100% for your scale. You just don't want to go up to like 200 or something else because you'll notice that things get a little fuzzy and blurry down here. So let me take this back to 100, and so that's why it's important that you know what size you're starting with. So in order to create the effect, you can pan and zoom things just a little bit subtly and actually have a really nice effect. So with this particular one, what I'm going to do is go to the beginning of it, go to my effects control window, open up the motion, and I need to be able to see both of these side by side. I'm going to scroll back to the very beginning of this clip. Now I'm going to scale to what I want it to start at, and then click on the toggle animation or set keyframe. Now I want to move forward. Now be aware that if you go to the very end, you actually have gone to the beginning of the next clip. So it's pretty easy. All you have to do is hit the left arrow one time and you'll go back one frame so that you are now at the very last frame of that particular clip. Now you can go ahead and click on create a keyframe and then you can scale it up a little bit. You could also just scale it as well. Now you'll see that I have created a simple zoom for this thing. Now let's say that you want the zoom to kind of end somewhere in the middle, and you want it to kind of stop and then kind of stay there. Well, these keyframes, if you look at them, are linear at first. So if I test this, you'll see it just kind of goes into that particular keyframe and stops. And that's not very exciting. So we have one of the most important things that we can do, which is ease in. And that's what that keyframe looks like. Just right click, choose ease in, and now watch what happens. Do you notice how that's a little bit softer as we move into it? Let me move over a little bit more. Maybe if I choose fit here, you can see it a little bit better. So it zooms in, and then it kind of subtly stops. And that's really nice. That's something that we want to consider doing. Now, how we are overlapping images and using transitions, I'll cover in a minute. And that can really affect things as well. So anyway, I'm going to go back to linear and then drag that back to the end so it lasts the entire time. And I'm going to go to the next clip, and I'm going to do something as well. Let me go back to the 25%. Go ahead and scale it and move it down just a little bit. Now we may find that we have to do scale and position at the same time. So let me scale that just back a little bit, and then just move it down a little bit too. So what I'm doing is I'm affecting both the scale and the zoom at the same time. Now be aware of this. If I look at these two clips right next to each other, this one's moving very slowly, and then that one's moving a little bit faster. So you just have to be aware of that, because sometimes you don't want the two to be too different from each other, so that one's moving really fast and the other one's moving really slow, unless your audio is also showing that type of change in pace. So now that's moving slow, and that one's moving slowly as well. And that looks a little bit better. Now, the last thing that we need to talk about when you're using pan and zoom, or this type of thing, is if you're going to use a transition, such as a dissolve. So I'm going to go to Video Transitions, Dissolve, and I want to drag this in between the two. So I'm going to zoom up just a little bit, so you can see on the timeline where I'm placed in between these two. And I'm going to drag my cross dissolve so it overlaps the two of them. Notice that I can drag it to the beginning, or to the middle, or to the end of that. What will happen is I'll be placing it so that the first one fades out, they fade in the middle, or I fade at the beginning of the next one. So I'm going to fade in the middle, and then go in and click on that cross dissolve, and you'll see there's where the effect is right there. I can see it. But if I click on each item, I want you to notice that that cross dissolve is up there as well, and the keyframe you'll see is no longer at the end. So what happens here is that it stops, and then the cross dissolve happens. So what I need to do is, if I apply transitions like this, I need to go ahead and go back to the clip and drag the keyframe to the end, go to the next clip, and drag these keyframes to the beginning. Click and drag around them, drag them to the beginning of the clip, and now you'll see that transition is nice and smooth. So that's how to use a very simple transition with your pan and zoom. Of course, remember, your pan and zoom does matter about if you're zooming into an object, zooming out of an object. You want to trade up a little bit. You don't want it to be consistent for all of them. Look at some shots that you might be able to do some fancier things with, but also consider how the panning and zooming affects the pace of your video. And those are all very important things when using this technique. So let me know if you have any questions, and let's go on to the next tutorial.